Dan Blocker, the man who brought Hoss Cartwright to life on Bonanza, won over fans with his warmth and humor. But behind the scenes, his story was full of unexpected twists and hidden truths. Now at 66, one of his sons has stepped forward to confirm a long-rumored secret about his father, something that could change everything fans thought they knew. But before diving into this revelation, it's worth looking back at the early events that led to this moment. From the start, Dan Blocker's life was larger than life. While Little Joe may have been the heartthrob of Bonanza, Hoss Cartwright was the gentle giant who captured hearts with his kindness, innocence, and unwavering goodness. More than just a character, he became a symbol of strength and warmth. Born Bobby Dan Davis Blocker on December 10, 1928, in DeKalb, Texas, he made an unforgettable entrance into the world, tipping the scales at an astonishing 14 pounds. That record-breaking birth was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Raised in the small town of O'Donnell, Texas, Dan spent his childhood working in his family's grocery store, carrying bags for customers and absorbing the values that would shape his kind-hearted nature. By the time he was 10, he was already putting in long hours doing tough jobs alongside grown men, hauling grain, working construction, and impressing everyone with his sheer strength. Locals gave him the nickname the Big Un, and by 12 he stood a towering 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. Unsurprisingly, a few local troublemakers tried to test him, but Dan never lost a fight. After high school, he attended the Texas Military Institute, where he proved to be a powerhouse on the football field. His talent earned him a scholarship to Sul Ross State University, and by then, he was a commanding presence at 6'4" and 275 pounds. Impossible to overlook. But it was during this time that a new passion quietly took root. When his college drama club needed someone to move heavy stage props, Dan was the natural choice. What started as a simple favor led to his first small acting role in a production of Arsenic and Old Lace. The thrill of performing hooked him, and before long he shifted gears, changing his major from English to theater. He had offers to play professional football, but his heart was set on acting. His dreams eventually took him to New York City, where he chased a career on Broadway. His dedication and natural talent landed him a role in King Lear, a pivotal moment on his path to Hollywood. But just as his journey was taking shape, life threw him an unexpected curveball. After college, Dan traded his textbooks for a military uniform, joining the U.S. Army. Standing at over 6'3" and weighing nearly 300 pounds, he was an imposing figure, and the Army had a tough time even finding boots that fit him. It took them a whole month. Once equipped, he was sent straight into the chaos of the Korean War. By Christmas of 1951, he was stationed on the front lines in Chorwon, North Korea, serving as a combat infantry sergeant with the 179th Infantry Regiment. His strength and resilience made him a formidable force, but the brutal reality of war would test him in ways he never imagined. Day in and day out, Dan Blocker and his fellow soldiers endured the brutal grind of battle. Freezing temperatures, sleepless nights, and the constant threat of enemy fire. For nearly 7 months, he fought through the horrors of trench warfare, surrounded by the deafening echoes of explosions and gunfire. As a leader among his men, he faced some of the war's most intense and grueling combat. One fateful night in the thick of battle, Blocker spotted a fellow soldier pinned down and unable to move. Without a second thought, he charged straight into the firestorm, braving enemy bullets to pull his comrade to safety. It was an act of pure courage, one that left him wounded, but also earned him a Purple Heart, a quiet symbol of the bravery he carried with him for the rest of his life. The battles at Pork Chop Hill were some of the fiercest in the Korean War, a place where survival alone felt like a victory. Blocker and his regiment fought tooth and nail, defending every inch of ground, knowing each gain came at a devastating cost. After months of brutal combat, his body was battered and he was finally evacuated, sent to a hospital to recover from both visible and invisible wounds. When he finally returned home, he carried with him the lasting memories of war's harsh realities. Though he had served with honor, the experience had changed him. He became an outspoken critic of military conflicts that relied on force, having seen firsthand the destruction war could bring. One issue in particular struck a nerve: the use of napalm. Deeply affected by the devastation he had witnessed, Blocker became a passionate advocate for peace, openly condemning the horrors of war. Back home, Dan Blocker was ready to leave the battlefield behind and focus on something that brought him joy: family. He married his college sweetheart, Dolphia Parker, and together they built a warm and loving home, raising 4 children who would become the center of his world. Acting wasn't initially part of his plan, But life had another surprise in store for the towering Texan. In pursuit of his doctorate, Blocker moved to California and enrolled at UCLA. But it didn't take long for Hollywood casting agents to notice his massive frame and unmistakable Southern charm. At the time, Westerns ruled television and Blocker seemed made for the genre. With his rugged good looks and commanding presence, he was a perfect fit for the tough, no-nonsense roles Westerns demanded. Before long, he started landing small parts in popular TV shows like Gunsmoke and Colt 45, bringing a natural warmth and humor to every character he played. Throughout the 1950s, he steadily built his acting career, appearing in hit series such as The Rifleman, Have Gun, Will Travel, and Maverick. Though he occasionally dipped his toes into film, television was where he truly thrived. In 1957, he got his first major break with a significant role in The Restless Gun. His performance struck a chord with audiences and opened doors to even bigger opportunities. Soon after, he took on the recurring role of Tiny Bwinger, a lovable and goofy ranch hand in Cimarron City. This role showcased his natural comedic timing and hinted at the charisma that would soon make him a star. Then came the role that would change everything. Dan Blocker landed the part of Hoss Cartwright on Bonanza, a character that would forever cement his place in television history and make him a household name across America. As Hoss, the warm-hearted and towering son of the Cartwright family, Dan Blocker became a familiar face in living rooms across America. Hoss was the lovable giant of Bonanza, not the sharpest of the Cartwright clan, but what he lacked in wit, he made up for with his enormous heart and unwavering kindness. Audiences, especially children, quickly grew attached to Hoss's straightforward charm and deep loyalty to those he cared about. For Dan, the character was more than just a role. It was a way to bring his own beliefs and values to life. He found inspiration in the words of 18th century Quaker missionary Stephen Grelle, who urged people to do all the good you can. That philosophy shaped Dan's portrayal of Hoss, making his compassion feel real and earning him a special place in the hearts of millions. Though Hoss was portrayed as simple and innocent, Dan himself was anything but. He was a highly intelligent, thoughtful man who held a master's degree in theater and had a deep appreciation for literature and philosophy. His portrayal of Hoss balanced tenderness with a fierce protective instinct, an attitude shaped by his own experiences as a decorated Korean War veteran who understood both the cost of conflict and the importance of peace. Dan's imposing stature made him a natural fit for the role, but it was his gentle spirit that truly brought Hoss to life. Just 2 years into his acting career, he became part of one of television's most beloved families. Off-screen, he formed a close friendship with his co-stars Lorne Greene and Michael Landon, a bond that went beyond acting. In fact, Dan was even the best man at Michael Landon's wedding to Lynn No, a testament to their deep connection. While Bonanza kept him busy, Dan occasionally ventured into film, appearing alongside Frank Sinatra in movies like Come Blow Your Horn and Lady in Cement. But despite his rising fame, he never forgot where he came from. The people of O'Donnell, Texas, beamed with pride at the quiet, thoughtful boy who had grown into a television star, bringing joy to millions. Dan Blocker's role as Hoss Cartwright turned him into a household name, though fame was never something he actively pursued. With his gentle nature and unmistakable presence, he became one of American television's most beloved figures. Yet the spotlight that came with success was something he struggled to embrace. Acting was his passion, but the constant attention wasn't something he enjoyed. He would have preferred to focus on his craft quietly, but with his talent and devoted fans, fading into the background simply wasn't an option. As much as he appreciated his fans, the loss of privacy could be overwhelming. His towering frame made him easy to recognize, and even something as simple as a family outing could turn into a frenzy as people flocked to see him. On one occasion, what was meant to be a peaceful vacation to the Yucatan quickly turned into a public spectacle. Locals immediately spotted him, calling out Hoss Cartwright wherever he went. Unlike many actors, Dan had no interest in staying in the limelight forever. In 1970, he and his family set off on a trip to Switzerland, inspired by the breathtaking lake country he had read about in National Geographic. The moment they arrived, they were enchanted by the serene landscapes surrounding Lakes Como, Maggiore, and Lugano. For Dan, the peaceful scenery and the promise of a quieter life felt like a dream come true. The family soon made the decision to settle in Switzerland, a place where they discovered not only tranquility but also an exceptional international education system that allowed their children to thrive in a new and enriching environment. As rumors swirled regarding Blocker's reasons for relocating abroad, some speculated that he was facing financial hardship. However, he quickly dismissed such claims, making it clear that Bonanza had brought him considerable wealth. His move had nothing to do with money. Rather, it was driven by his desire to escape the relentless pressures of fame. In Switzerland, Bonanza aired in German, which created a language barrier that worked in Blocker's favor, allowing him to enjoy life without the constant recognition that had followed him everywhere in the United States. The peaceful Swiss countryside provided him with the serenity he had longed for. Despite his tremendous success, he remained humble and grounded, never losing sight of the privileges his career had afforded him. He frequently voiced his admiration for hard-working individuals, particularly underpaid teachers, whose struggles he deeply respected. Reflecting on his own career, he once acknowledged a certain irony in his financial success, remarking, "Let's face it, I sold out for money." Though he occasionally considered returning to teaching, his fame as Hoss Cartwright made it nearly impossible to transition back into a simpler, quieter life. During the 1960s, the cast and crew of Bonanza frequently traveled to various locations for filming. On one occasion, they found themselves in the southern United States, where racial segregation was still deeply entrenched. Although the civil rights movement was pushing for progress, prejudice remained firmly rooted in the region, and many hotels, restaurants, and public venues openly refused service to African Americans. During one such trip, the Bonanza team arrived at a hotel, only to be met with a blatant act of discrimination. The establishment refused to allow their African American colleagues to stay. The entire cast and crew were stunned by this injustice, and before anyone could react, Dan Blocker, known for his kind spirit but unwavering principles, stepped forward with firm resolve. Without a moment's hesitation, he made it clear that if the hotel would not accommodate everyone, then no one from the cast or crew would be staying there. His words were not merely a statement, they were a promise. In that moment, he proved that his sense of fairness and justice was not just something he portrayed on screen, it was an essential part of who he was. Dan Blocker's commitment to justice was as immense as his physical stature. Beneath his gentle demeanor lay an unwavering intolerance for bullying and oppression in any form. In a 1964 interview, he put it plainly, "I hate a bully worse than anything. I'm a big man. I don't like fights, but if I see a 180-pound guy beating on a 130-pound guy, you can damn bet I'll take care of the big guy in a hurry." Blocker understood the power that came with his size and strength, but he never used it to intimidate, only to protect. His bold stand against racial discrimination while working on Bonanza spoke volumes about his character. By refusing to accept injustice, he proved that even one person's actions could make a meaningful difference in challenging the status quo. Dan Blocker wasn't just known for his towering presence and warm-hearted nature. He was also famous for his truly massive appetite, which was just as outsized as his personality. Those who knew him couldn't help but marvel at the sheer amount of food he could consume. Each morning, he would start his day with a feast so enormous that it left most people in disbelief. A dozen eggs, 2 loaves of bread, and 2 quarts of milk just to get him going. As the day went on, he would continue to devour massive portions of food, piling his plate high with meats, potatoes, and more bread, polishing off serving after serving in a way that left onlookers utterly stunned. Dan's appetite was the stuff of legends. True to his Texan roots, he had a deep love for hearty, down-home meals. One of his favorite indulgences was a whole roasted ham, which he could devour entirely on his own without hesitation. While he wasn't too keen on fruits and vegetables, he had an undeniable sweet tooth, with cakes, pies, and cookies ranking high among his guilty pleasures. His love for good, filling meals even extended into his business ventures. He became a co-owner of the Ponderosa Steakhouse chain, a tribute to the iconic Cartwright family ranch from Bonanza. The restaurant served exactly the kind of generous, satisfying fare he adored, and as a co-owner, he enjoyed the perk of dining for free at any Ponderosa location. Even though he enjoyed these indulgences, he understood that keeping up with Hoss Cartwright's beloved image required a bit of discipline. The demands of Hollywood forced him to strike a balance between his passion for food and the realities of show business. He went through cycles of strict diets and rigorous exercise routines in an attempt to stay in shape for his role, yet the temptation of his favorite dishes often proved impossible to resist. Between his emotional connection to food and the never-ending supply of meals on set, his weight fluctuates frequently. By the later seasons of Bonanza, these ups and downs took a toll on his body. The constant cycle of yo-yo dieting became increasingly difficult to manage, and eventually he required padding to maintain Hoss's larger-than-life appearance on screen. Still, Dan's legendary appetite never wavered. The cast and crew would watch in awe as he tackled meal after meal with unstoppable enthusiasm. Even when the cameras weren't rolling, his love for food remained a defining part of who he was, often out-eating everyone in the room without even breaking a sweat. In the early 1970s, as the Vietnam War stirred political tensions across the United States, Dan Blocker made a life-altering decision. He and his family relocated to the serene countryside of Switzerland, seeking refuge from the growing unrest. Despite the distance, his dedication to Bonanza never wavered. He frequently traveled back to the U.S., committed to bringing the beloved Western series to life for the millions who adored him. As the show approached its final seasons, his health began to decline. He was diagnosed with gallstones, a condition that, while common, required surgery to remove his gallbladder. The procedure was supposed to be routine, and at first everything seemed to go as expected. He appeared to be recovering well, and his family breathed a sigh of relief. However, in an unforeseen and devastating twist, he suffered a sudden pulmonary embolism, a fatal blood clot that took his life unexpectedly. The loss of Dan Blocker sent shockwaves through his family, friends, and fans worldwide. The entertainment industry mourned not just the passing of a towering presence and beloved television icon, but also a man known for his kindness, warmth, and unwavering generosity. Tributes poured in, honoring his legacy and the joy he had brought to audiences through his portrayal of Hoss Cartwright. His absence left a noticeable void, and Bonanza struggled to move forward without him. In the midst of the tragedy, a peculiar tale started to circulate, one that would continue to fascinate audiences for decades to come. There were rumors going around that Dan Blocker, who weighed more than 300 pounds, was too big to fit into a normal casket. A piano box was said to have been the only object that was large enough to accommodate him for burial, according to rumors that circulated. Despite the fact that it appeared to be completely absurd, the story quickly took on a life of its own. There was little doubt that the story, regardless of whether it was based on fact or fiction, contributed to the larger-than-life mythology that is Dan Blocker. He was a guy whose presence, both on and off the screen, could never be really contained. The narrative took on a life of its own, fusing together different elements of fact and fiction to create a myth that, for some people, appeared to be almost appropriate for a celebrity of Blocker's magnitude. Nevertheless, the reality is a lot less spectacular. Woodlawn Cemetery in Santa Monica, California, was the location where Dan Blocker was laid to rest in a conventional wooden casket. The story of the piano box evolved into a colorful mythology as a result of Blocker's singular presence and the profound respect that people had for him. Irrespective of the fact that it continues to be a humorous yarn, and for others an oddly reassuring one, it is nothing more than a mythology that has no basis in reality. In the event of the unexpected passing of a cherished actor such as Dan Blocker, particularly one who played such a pivotal role in an ongoing series, a void is created that will never be completely replaced. When Dan went tragically on May 13, 1972, the shock was felt well beyond his family and friends, and it had a profound impact on both his fans and his colleagues. His absence was tremendously felt by those individuals who had collaborated with him on the production of Bonanza. As Hoss Cartwright, he had been the center of the Cartwright family, exemplifying the warmth and comedy that struck a chord with audiences all across the world. His larger-than-life presence and kind personality had left an indelible impact on the program, and his loss has left a vacuum that no one else will be able to fill. In light of the fact that the last season was drawing near, the cast and crew were confronted with the challenging reality of continuing on without him. The absence of Hoss was a significant obstacle for Bonanza because he played such an important role in the show. In order to handle his disappearance, a number of different solutions were considered, such as devoting an episode to his memory or figuring out a method to subtly remove his character from the narrative. The producers ultimately took the courageous choice to address Dan's demise directly within the show, which was a very courageous move. Both the performers and the audience were able to express their sorrow through this decision, which not only paid honor to Blocker's life, but also provided fans the opportunity to say their final goodbyes to Hoss Cartwright. The actor who played Little Joe, Michael Landon, was given the job of writing the first episode, even though Dan was not present. For the purpose of letting Hoss's absence be felt in the heavy silences and silent sadness of the Cartwright family, Landon handled the task with a subtle but highly emotional touch. Initially, the episode was going to be centered on Haas's romantic journey, but after Dan's passing, Landon changed it to depict the grief that comes with the loss of a loved one. He focused on the weight of quiet to express the depth of grief, knowing that words could never entirely portray the emotions that were at play. He did not provide a precise reason for Haas's absence, rather, he relied on the emotional weight of stillness. The absence of Dan on site was something that could not be ignored. Everyone involved had a great deal of emotional distress as they filmed that first episode without him, remembering the guy who had brought so much joy into their lives. The cast and crew shared memories, laughter, and tears as they went through the process of remembering him. It was in the comfortable environment of the Cartwright family dining room, where there had been a continual presence of joy and companionship in the past, that a mood of bittersweetness arrived. It appeared as though Dan was there in every nook and cranny of the set, and despite the fact that the program continued, his presence was always absent from each and every moment. There was never a time when Bonanza was the same without Haas. Already undergoing a gradual drop in popularity, the show's popularity continued to worsen after Dan's passing, which only hastened the downturn. The series was relocated from its prized Sunday night time to a less advantageous Tuesday night position, when it faced tough competition from ABC's Movie of the Week. NBC shifted the series from its Sunday night slot to Tuesday night. Bonanza's ratings took a huge hit as a result of the popularity of blockbuster films such as Ben-Hur and Brian's Song, which simultaneously attracted viewers. In spite of the cast's best efforts to preserve the show's heritage, it became increasingly difficult to recreate the enchantment that had emerged during the show's formative years. As the last season of Bonanza struggled to retain the pace that had once made the show a television juggernaut, it marked the beginning of the end for the classic Western. The impetus that Bonanza had lost was difficult to restore. In the absence of Haas's warmth and sense of humor, the show had a distinct feel, and viewers gradually became disinterested. NBC made the decision to finally bring the narrative of the Cartwright family to a close in 1973, after the series had been on the air for a total of 14 seasons. Even when Bonanza was at the pinnacle of its success, Dan Blocker couldn't help but feel that this day would eventually arrive. Within the context of interviews, he expressed a refreshing honesty on the unavoidable conclusion, acknowledging that no show could continue on indefinitely. He anticipated, with extraordinary clarity, that the sheer amount of episodes and the mounting costs of production would eventually become too great of a burden for the network to bear. He was right. After everything was said and done, the dying of Dan Blocker was a watershed moment that irrevocably separated Bonanza into two distinct eras, the years with Haas and the years without him. Even if the series has now evolved into an enduring classic that continues to be cherished by fans even after several decades have passed, the absence of Dan had an evident influence. Because of his absence, Bonanza has lost a significant amount of the warmth that had contributed to the show's exceptional quality. He had been the show's heart and soul. As Dirk Blocker was growing up with the presence of Haas Cartwright as his father, he was strongly influenced by Dan Blocker's towering stature, both physically and in personality. Haas Cartwright was a parent who was larger than life. At the same time, however, the unexpected death of his father when he was 43 years old had a profound impact on him. Dirk's personal life was not the only thing that was affected by this terrible loss. It also left an imprint on the course that he would eventually choose in his professional life. In spite of the fact that he followed in his father's footsteps and also became an actor, Dirk had no desire to achieve the same level of recognition that Dan Blocker had achieved. As a result of spending his youth observing his father being contacted by fans on a regular basis, and being unable to go anywhere without people looking for a moment of connection, Dirk came to the realization at an early age that the spotlight was just not for him. Instead, he went toward the more subdued life of a character actor, which was a career that enabled him to work without the unrelenting attention that had followed his father. On May 13, 1972, the catastrophic sequence of events occurred. Dan Blocker, who was well known not only for his incredible talent, but also for his kindness and sense of humor, passed soon after undergoing what ought to have been a routine surgery on his gallbladder. His death occurred at Daniel Freeman Hospital in Inglewood as a result of a pulmonary embolism, which was brought on by unforeseen complications. The unexpected manner in which he passed away shocked Dirk fundamentally. It was grief that engulfed him, but rather than allowing it to take over his life, he pushed himself into his work and his day-to-day activities anyhow. To the outside world, he appeared to be calm and collected. But on the inside, he was struggling to cope with the loss of the person who had been his most significant source of direction and assistance. The passage of time allowed Dirk to acquire a more profound comprehension of his father. Dan Blocker was a man of strong convictions, passionate about justice, and committed to causes that were larger than himself. He began to fully realize the complex and multifaceted life that Dan Blocker had led, not only as a recognized actor but also as a man of strong convictions. He was a man of compassion, constantly showing charity to those who were in need, and he was someone who persevered through difficult situations with humor and a strong will. Dirk discovered the source of his greatest inspiration in that, even after achieving a great deal of fame, Dan Blocker never lost sight of the things that were truly important to him, and he remained faithful to his principles right up to the very end.